Welcome to This Is My Ride Bike Stories by Argon 18 podcast. My name's Mark Beaumont and I'll be your host today. My guest is Ana Orenz and we're going to talk all things bike endurance and goals, where we've come from and hopefully where we're going. It's also inevitable that we'll talk about Anna's monstrous crash and her return to cycling. Have a good listen. It starts now. But first, I'm Mark Beaumont, and I've been riding an Argon 18 and helping the team over at headquarters in Montreal, Canada, over the last year or two. My background is very much in road riding, in ultra endurance. I was 12 years old when I cycled across Scotland, and that kind of got me started. 10 years later, in my early 20s, I decided to pedal around the planet. And a few years after that, fast forwards another 10, 12 years, and I decided to do it much faster. And that obsession with how fast you can get around planet Earth has kind of been with me throughout my career. Over the last couple of years, I've enjoyed getting into the off-road and discovering gravel. Clearly, during the COVID period, we couldn't travel the way we used to. So finding trails closer to home. I live in Edinburgh in Scotland, and finding some beautiful parts of the UK that I didn't know before. By way of introduction to our guest today, Ana, I'd really like her to tell her story far, far better than I could. But by brief introduction, I love her Instagram bio. It simply says global citizen, mother, slightly obsessed with goats and mountains, which begs a few questions, but there's some stuff I want to ask about there. Her picture in her bio definitely makes it clear she loves riding a bike. But when it comes to that palmares from ultra endurance cycling, pretty impressed to see that she was the fastest woman at Race Across France in 2018, the Trans-Pyrenees 2019, Paris-Brest, Paris in also in 2019, and many more. Now, that's in just a few short years, a pretty impressive list of ultra races, just to have the time to train and take part in these. And then this year, recording at the end of 2021, a big crash, which unfortunately brought her to global attention through the press that she got off the back of that, and now her recovery. So hopefully a great time to catch up and hear not just what that cycling career has been so far, but what the future looks like. So Ana, thanks a ton for making the time to join us on the podcast. Let me do a better job at understanding who you are. I'm chatting here in Edinburgh in Scotland. You're in Spain, am I right?
Yes, I'm currently living in Cantabria, Spain. I've moved here 2 years ago and I'm super happy. I feel really at home.
Well, it's a beautiful part of the world and a pretty amazing place to ride your bike. Going back to the start, you were born in Germany. Where did it all start for you in terms of sport, cycling, the outdoors? I read online that you said your daughter kind of inspired you to get into cycling, but was there anything in your own childhood that got you onto two wheels?
Well, I always used to love running, cycling. When I was very little, I had a hip problem and I couldn't do much of this. So I started horse riding to remedy this. So I was a horse rider and I worked with horses for many years. And my daughter was involved with horses as well. But as a rebellion, as children in general always have to do the opposite of what their parents do, she started to ride her bike a lot. Basically, we went on a pilgrimage together. And after 300 kilometers, I found that her rebellion was pretty much good fun. And I decided that when I come back to the UK, Ruby was born in the UK. And we were living there at the time. I decided that maybe it's time to turn from horses to bikes. They travel faster and they eat less.
Yeah, I mean, I was going to say it's a cheaper hobby, but that's not necessarily the case. But I grew up on a farm with horses and they take a lot of time, don't they?
Yes.
So I mean, you've lived in a ton of places. You were born in the UK, did you say? You lived. Your daughter was. So
yeah.
So you started life in Germany. You came to the UK, yes. And you've ended up in Spain. Put me right.
No, I started in Germany. then I moved to Portugal, and just to get further education for the horses, I moved to the first Ireland, then the UK, and then I ended up in Spain.
Wonderful. And for the UK part of your sort of your life, what was that like? I mean, you said your daughter was born here, and this is where you first started riding the bike. Where were you? What was it like?
I was living in the Cotswolds, and I was fairly happy there for a long time, but things changed politically a bit, and being sort of European national after the Brexit, I started to get sort of with the feeling that I would like to live in another part of Europe, perhaps, and the climate changed a bit for me, and also life situation. So we lived in the Cotswold, and it's beautiful riding around that area as well. And I mean, in England, I especially enjoyed when I was into it, the horse racing, because I was working in that, and racing always fascinated me, whether it be running or horse racing or now bike racing. And I always really admired that lifestyle. And it was perfect for that, especially the Cotswolds. There was a lot of it, and I was freelancing, so I had a great time until, I mean, eventually you get too old for that, because you have got a lot of falls, and I'm actually surprised I didn't break my neck after 20 years of working with horses, and I end up on a bike, which is so much tame. It happens there. So yeah, I had a good time in the UK.
Yeah, it's a beautiful part of the country. I do quite a lot of filming with Global Cycling Network, who are based in Bath. A lot of the presenters live in the Cotswolds. We do a fair amount of riding there. So in the recent 4 or 5 years, I've got to discover that part of the world as well. And you're right, there's some amazing road riding and a great place to get started. You mentioned that your daughter took you, or you took her, on a 300-kilometer ride. That sounds like an unlikely first ride. I mean, that's a big. How old was she at the time, and what was the inspiration for that?
Well, she was 9 years old, and she said to me, "Mom, I'm not going to walk this Camino Santiago, but I would like to take my bike." And I said, "Bike uphill? Do you know how hard this is? It's disgusting. I rather walk. You can take the bike." And I did the math, and I thought, well, actually, if we both ride the bike, then we will still make faster progress, because even if you walk up every hill, we can still just coast down the hills with on the bike. So I decided, okay, let's both go. And so yeah, we managed to do it in 4 days actually. And I had my first baby. I didn't know anything about ultracycling, by the way, nothing. But we ended up bivvying in a petrol station because we were caught by the police with apparently not appropriate lighting and this and the other. So we had to bivvy, and we had a great adventure. I mean, Ruby basically was leading the way to my first ultracycling experience without knowing it.
That's so inspiring. I've got 2 daughters aged 8 and 5. And, to hear of, her leadership, her idea, and then you just giving her the freedom, the support to actually go and do that, to live that. 'Cause so many parents would say, no, don't be crazy. That's insane. But actually, you got to do something together there that is a memory that will last a lifetime. Plus, it was then a catalyst for you to, carry on. And I'm intrigued to know how, as an amateur athlete over the years, from that sort of starting point, you've managed to juggle, being a mom on your own with a growing daughter, your work, but then also training for these incredible events. I mean, you didn't just continue to do your holidays on a bike. You entered some of the biggest races there are in Europe.
Yeah, it was a release, because I think to be a good mom, you have to be really happy. If you want to do your job well, and if you want to raise your child, you should give them example that you do what you really want to do in your life and that you enjoy it. And I never felt like doing anything without her. But with the ultra race, basically what I did was I would use my time really wisely. I've always been working, and I mean, currently, and before the TransAmerica, for example, I was working about 40 hours a week, and I was training 20, and I always made time so that I could still see her. But we would do the weekends together. I would ride early in the morning, so it was always fitting really nicely. But I had 1 week or 2 weeks in the year where I could just go and do my thing, and Ruby would be with her dad, and I would just ride the races and then come back refreshed, and I was set for another year of hard graft and being a good mom. And I think over the years she's now really got me. She in fact said, "Mom, if you go again, I want to come with you." which is pretty cool. She said, when you let in hospital, I had the feeling, I have to do it now. I have to go on the bike and do it. So, I think it's really important that you live your dreams, and your children will appreciate if you are happy. You can just function better as a parent, and you can always make time for things. I think it's possible. It's in the end of the day, the training plan that I had. If you can fit in 1 hour every day, how much is this of your time? 1 hour on the turbo, and then during the weekends, I would just do long rides. Yeah, and if you really want to do something, you might get up at 3 or 4 o'clock in the morning and ride, and then see your family after and chill. So it's possible if you want to do it. Not everyone wants to do it, but I did, and I enjoyed it.
I find that interesting, the way you think about those different aspects of your life, your work, your family, your sport. And actually, it doesn't sound like a compromise for you, because you're kind of explaining that you're a better mom and you're better at work if you ride your bike. It's not like you're taking away from those things. You're actually more relevant. You're more present when you're doing those things, because you're getting to look after yourself. You're being, your physical and mental well-being is something that you're taking care of. But I mean, as you say, it's not everyone's idea of fun. I mean, I assume if you're listening to this podcast, you enjoy riding your bike, but what's that transition into ultra racing like for you? Because I mean, as much as you might be starting some of these, incredible races across Europe with other riders, the only person you're really racing is yourself. It's you in the road, isn't it?
Yeah, well, it is. It's very lonely, but I like to go out there, because it's just the defragmentation of the of that. You can go out, and what I enjoy about it, just today, the girl that just won a race across Andes is a friend of me. It's Sonia, and she Colombo, and she was messaging me today, and she said, "Anna, I've never met you, and I feel so connected about you. I was thinking about you during the race." And this is, I think, you're out there, you're really by yourself, but you're not. You could do those challenges by yourself, and I admire you for what you've done with the 80 days, because that was one of those things. You go out by yourself and it's just you. And I mean, this is great, but if you do the actual races, it's a bit of there's a community, that someone else is out there in the same movie, basically, having probably a complete different experience. But I made some great friends through those races. And Race Across France, for example, there was 2 of us in there. The girl I was racing with or against, however you want to call it, we ended up best friends after. We had so much in common instantly. And there's a small community, and it's really nice to bump into certain characters you wouldn't usually meet, because we aren't sort of lone wolves. And I love this aspect. I think it's the first time that in my life that I found so many people that were so similar without and not even having to talk much. You just knew, okay, we're on one wavelength. We go through the same stuff, and it's a great feeling. This is what I probably enjoy most about it.
The thing which I love about that community is, whether you win or lose, and it's amazing the events that you have succeeded at. It's the respect that comes from just being able to endure, being able to ride your bike these distances and look after yourself. All the stuff that happens off the bike, the nutrition, where you're sleeping every night, how to just think your way through these vast distances. And I took part in my first organized race this year, because I've always just gone out and done expeditions. I did GB Duro in the UK, the gravel race. And there was 60 start places and only 14 finished. And I genuinely felt on the finishing line just this amazing respect for anyone who had endured that journey, who had thought their way through the task, who had lived that. They all had this amazing story to tell. And the leaderboard was interesting, but it was more interesting for the dot watchers, for the riders. As you say, there's just this camaraderie and this deep understanding. You can talk about it. You can make films about it. You can stand on stage and make podcasts about it. But unless you've ridden your bike thousands of kilometers and know what that feels like, to be riding your bike at 2 o'clock in the morning or whatever it is, it's not something that you observe. It's something that you have to experience. And I just think there's what you're talking about there interests me, because it's that kinship, isn't it? It's that connection between people. You're doing something quite difficult, and you're trying to figure out yourself. You're learning something about yourself through taking on these rides.
Yeah, definitely. Every time you get a piece more, and I think you grow. It's a growth process, and you also, I think riding in groups or in pairs is really difficult. I did try that once, And you learn parts, and you see parts of yourself that you really don't want to see, and eventually you just can't hold them back anymore. When the witching hour comes, middle of the night, you just turn into a monster. And I mean, on this one occasion, I was riding the pair. It's just literally you wake up and you say, where did that come from? Did I really do this? Did I really say this? Yes, you did. And it's, it's one of those things. And this is probably why it's quite good that we're all a bit separate. Because the inner beast comes out and releases. And if you're brave enough to observe this and learn from it, I think you take a lot back from this to your general life.
I think that's a massive point. When you take part in events on the bike which really push your comfort zone mentally and physically, it totally changes your perspective on other challenges in life. Back home with my daughters and my wife, or my day-to-day job, I've got a completely different perspective, because life can be quite busy, for sure. You're juggling a huge amount, but it's also quite safe. There's not that same element of, endeavor and risk that there is when it comes to riding your bike vast distances. And I just think you know yourself so much better. And I love 5-star luxury. Don't get me wrong. I enjoy the fine things in life, but I also love, waking up in a ditch in the rain in the middle of nowhere and knowing that it's just up to my determination to ride my bike to the next checkpoint. I think there's something wonderful at that extreme. And I think life can be so comfortable that you can actually become quite fundamentally unhappy. And through riding your bike, so many people find that struggle. And struggle's a good thing, because I think if you get too comfortable, you become quite unhappy. So I think, I'm sure a lot of people listening will relate to that. But I'm fascinated in the mindset of ultra endurance. And when thinking over the last 2-3 years, before we talk about the year that you've just had and the recovery that you're going through at the moment, what were your plans? What was the journey? Did you have a clear game plan through 2018, 19, 20, 21? Did you have a game plan where this was taking you, or was it just like another idea, another event?
Well, when I discovered the bike on that journey with my daughter, I said, I'm going to come back and race those things. I don't know what the background in horse racing. So if you've got a racehorse, you usually find a race that suits the horse. If you want to do well and enjoy yourself, you find a race that suits. And I thought, well, what would suit me? And I realized, okay, long distances really seem to suit. The longer, the better. So I got into it, and I was just testing the feet, and I keep discovering different things. Like you said, you discovered gravel. I haven't really been there yet, but I noticed that the wonderful bike I've just been sent actually takes larger tires. So it's another opportunity to maybe explore that as well. But the long distance, like basically what I've achieved, or what I've been doing so far, every year I set myself a few goals. I usually do, because of my limited time with work and with Ruby. I usually set one trainings event that is my sort of B event, and one A event that I really want to do, and then I go for that. And I usually, around Christmas time, I make a Christmas present to myself by choosing one event or two, and then pursuing them for the rest of the year. And I need to fall in love with it. I need to find something that just feels right. And maybe that's just one. You should make yourself a Christmas gift, I think. And for me, that's my gift.
That's awesome. I love that. That's really cool. And you're committing to something which becomes your purpose that year. So the reason that we ended up having this conversation was because of a bike crash that you had earlier in the year, and the fact that Argon 18 followed that journey and realized you trashed your bike and sent a replacement. So I'm interested to know what the journey back onto the bike is looking like for you, but not to spend too long on the accident. And there's a lot of information online about it, but that was a hell of an off. You were racing. How do you pronounce it? TransAmerica.
Yeah.
TransAmerica, and you were on a major descent, big descent, going fast, and then the crash.
Actually,
do you remember what happened?
I wasn't going that fast. I looked at the tracking really thoroughly, because probably like yourself, you do long distances and you do numbers. You look at your numbers. I looked at the tracker, and I'm a careful descender at night, especially if visibility is low. And I noticed that not any time during those 5 hours I was riding, I was going over 40 kilometers an hour, which I personally find is a sensible speed, with a loaded bike. The descent was completely wide, visible, and I think what happened basically when the bike flew through the air because the tracker pings every 3 minutes, it recorded. So the impact I had was at 60 kilometers an hour, and I flew for 40 meters. I don't know how many feet that is. It was quite a substantial bit. They reproduced that. I properly turned over twice, and then I lay there for an hour, not knowing anything. Opened the eyes, woke up, led for another hour, and then thankfully I was recovered.
And the impact. So what time of day was it? What did you hit? What do you remember what happened, or is it all just piecing it together after the event?
Well, I just saw the wild boar by the side of the road, and I thought, oh no. I just remember me saying no. And I tried to just be positive and be really gentle, because you're riding on a loaded bike. You can't just slam the brakes on. You have to be gentle. So I tried to avoid the pig to the left. And I think basically what happened was a really unfortunate setup. On the right-hand side was a massive hill, like just earth, and a wooded area. Pig had parked himself there. And on the left side was separation, metal separation, to prevent cars from falling down or whatever. So the pig was properly what I assume he was running left, right. I could not avoid him. At some point I hit him, and I don't remember anything of it. It went so quick. I remember nothing. I just remember waking up, checking my teeth, and thinking, oh no, I think I lost a tooth. What happened? Well, I suppose a pig. And I looked back and I thought, oh, the bike, I hope it's still all right. Otherwise I won't finish the race. And then I tried to get up and the legs didn't function. I thought, this ain't good. And I couldn't find my phone. And I thought, well, okay, maybe I should just start praying. And that thankfully worked. So,
you were eventually found, what, an hour or so later by the next racer on the course?
Yeah, well, it's luckily Raphael, who was the only one who had chosen the same route. That was quite lucky. And he was on top of it. He works for ambulance in Germany. I was born in Germany, so it was quite nice to have a German attendant. And he was incredible. He kept me warm. He did all the right things. He was super quiet, and he gave me a lot of strength. I mean, I suppose I am quite tough and I can bear with quite a lot, but he found me in a fairly miserable way, and I wasn't allowed to move, and I led quite uncomfortably on the cold road, and the ambulance didn't appear for another hour. So initially the wrong one, he prevented them from lifting me into the wrong ambulance, because he said this patient must not be moved. She's got potential spinal injury. So I led there for a while, but I felt safe because he was there and he protected me, kept me warm, which was amazing.
What an amazing guy. And just so lucky that he had not just the background in terms of that education to know what to do, but also that calm demeanor, that ability to cope under pressure.
Definitely.
And it's interesting when you crash your bike, because the first thing you think of is often not the most relevant thing. I mean, when I crashed near Moscow on my round the world in 80 days, it wasn't nearly as serious as your crash. But the thing which I was upset about initially was my bike and my broken teeth. You know, the fact that I'd broken other bones, and that there was a much more serious, things to overcome, and it was nothing compared to the off you had. But it's interesting because there's something about your teeth and your mouth which is just so sensitive and so personal that it's where you're initially sort of drawn to, and then you sort of like look at the rest of your body and go, actually, my teeth don't really matter.
But Mark, I think, sorry to interrupt you, but I think the reason why we are so worried about our teeth is because really ultra cycling is all about the eating. The first thing
That's true.
Like, oh no,
that's true.
The input entry is broken. This is not good. And actually, this contains with me, unfortunately. But yeah, you just think, oh no, can't eat, can't ride bike.
I know.
Yeah.
I know. You are definitely what you eat when you ride the bike. So unfortunately, the injuries were a hell of a lot more serious than that. So, what did you find out afterwards? What was and I know you're still dealing with some of the surgeries and the recovery at the moment, but what happened?
So basically, I damaged my face quite badly, and there are parts of my nose missing. I've just yesterday found out that sadly this is going to be a quite long process with several operations, and 2 operations I will have to not ride after because I could cause bleeding. So next year is going to be a bit annoying and niggling. that continues with another 3 operations. I had damage on my medulla, on my spinal cord. That was caused due to a hematoma because of 3 fractured spinal processes in my cervical spine. And I lost the teeth. Sort of my mouth was quite damaged. So the worst bit really was the spinal damage, because I couldn't move for 6 weeks, and that was quite worrying. And they didn't quite know the extent of the injuries. What I'm dealing with at the moment is, my back end just doesn't belong to me. It functions, it listens to me, but I don't know if this is a good thing or not. I notice my cadence has gone up. Maybe it's because I'm frantically trying to wake up those legs, but they're functioning, and I can cycle, and it's getting a bit more comfortable. So there's still some damage there, and you won't know with spinal damage. You won't know until a year later how much will stay and how much will go.
I was looking at your Instagram stories, and you've been very candid. You've been very honest about documenting your recovery and some of the setbacks, and being really honest about the mental and the physical side of that, because it's not straightforward. It's not known. It's not like you had a diagnosis day one and you could sort of build back to training. There's, as you point out, still things you don't know, still things you're figuring out. And that post that you put up recently about, as you say, feeling quite disconnected. You were on the bike, you were turning your legs, but not feeling connected, is interesting, because clearly as a bike rider, as much as it would be nice to be able to switch off sometimes and not, be disconnected from the suffering of the ride, you realize in a situation like yours, and that's what I thought when I read the post, that actually knowing yourself, feeling your body, knowing, as I say, being tuned into your cadence and your power and your balance on the bike is so fundamental as a rider. And I could sort of see in your Instagram post your frustration, but I was really heartened to see about, you felt it was important to share that story. You wanted to be honest about, the highs and the lows, and the fact that there's still a lot of unknowns in terms of your journey back to being a bike rider.
Well, I don't know if I can race again. I'm certainly going to try it, but the thing is, when you ride a long ride, and I'm sure you've in your challenges yet this as well. When you start, the only way to get through it and to get it done is by keep going. You just have to keep going, and you have to stay positive. If you look, last night when I drove home, I thought I don't want to have another 3 operations. But I thought, well, there's no I don't want. This doesn't exist. You just have to keep going. So you do those things, and I think it's important to be honest. I'm far not as honest as some. I'm friends now through this accident. The difficulty is you can't explain it. It's a really weird thing, nerve damage really is, and the world it takes you, and the sort of depths you go to when you can't move. Imagine what you say is right. You need to feel your body. You're really connected to your body. My friend Rufus has said to me, "You abuse your body." No, we actually don't abuse our body. We celebrate it. I think as we are out there, we have to listen really well what you want to eat, how you're gonna take care of yourself to last that long, and then suddenly all of this gets interrupted, and it is a big hit. I have, through this injury, had the pleasure of meeting a few people that are in the same situation, and they write about this a lot more detailed. It is a fairly dark place, but there's always hope, and with all, I'm really lucky with the injuries I've got. There are others which are a lot worse off, and I could have been a lot worse off, but it's never pleasant, and the worst bit is about it, you never know how much it is. You just can't give a complete diagnosis of what it is going to be.
And as you say, it will probably be into next year before your body tells you. Clearly you're doing as much physio and recovery and taking as much medical advice as you can, but as you say, it takes a long time for the nerves to start communicating properly, and for you to really understand, what you will be able to do as a bike rider. I love that comment about the fact that when you're taking on these big events and you're racing, some people might say that you're abusing your body, but actually, you're figuring out what you're capable of. You're celebrating the fact that you can do these things, and I guess going forwards, it's about reframing that. I can't imagine, sort of seeing your mindset and reading your story, I can't imagine you'll ever stop trying to figure out what you're capable of.
No, definitely not.
Well, were you surprised when the story broke about your race, the response, the GoFundMe page, and the reaction from people you didn't know. It was interesting to see that even now, months and months later, there's still support coming in for your recovery. And
yeah, it's amazing.
it was. I thought it was amazing from afar. Just seeing that from across here in Scotland. But what did it feel like for you when you saw those comments and people getting in touch?
It helps so much because Ruby and me, I mean, our financial situation was fairly basic. And yes, there's an insurance in place. But now, for example, with the facial operation, I actually have the chance to privately look for the best option. And being in a country where I've only lived for a short amount of time, this was huge, massive. And I can do things like, for example, now food is so important. I can just go and buy whatever I like and nourish myself as good as I can. I can pay for an osteopath who is supporting me and has been supporting me since day one. I can go and do a fitness program. I mean, it's amazing. My rehab is amazing, and I could do bike fit and all those things. It's been really strong, and I would have never thought that so many people are gonna basically get in touch and contact me also in person. It was crazy. I couldn't believe it in the hospital. This is how I started moving my hands again. I started writing thank you notes first with one finger, then with two, eventually with three, and then with four. So if ever anyone can be blamed for that, I made it back into the office and that I can work a bit again, this will be the people who sent me those donations, because I was so overwhelmed and thought, I have to do it. And so important that you recover as quick as possible to keep the movement. So it was great in many ways. I cried a lot reading the comments as well on the GoFundMe or on Instagram. It was amazing.
It's that fighting spirit, writing little thank you notes, got you moving again. And I guess after a major crash like that, those small things, feel like significant breakthroughs. You joked when you first came around, when you were conscious after the crash, you looked back up the road to check your bike. I mean, that shows you're a true bike rider.
Well, that was real. That was real. You've got no idea how much this bike meant to me.
Yeah.
Like, oh my God, are you right, Dad? I'm so sorry. Did I hurt you? No,
did I read correctly that you name all your bikes?
Yeah, they all have to have names.
Okay.
Are you not?
No, I've never done that. I understand naming boats, and I've got friends that have named their bikes, but I've never named my bikes. Give me some examples. What have your bikes been called?
Well, the first was called Mira. The second was Kaya. The Argon I had before, the Gallium, was called Florence, and I often called her Flossie. That was her nickname. When Flossie and me got into us, Flossie, I just can't bear it. So, I mean, if your bike has got a name, it's almost, you've got someone that you can talk to. It's a bit crazy, but you put a lot of care, you spend a lot of time on those things. So, you almost have started to have a bit of a connection with them. So they had all those names, and the new one was called now Raphael, after the Archangel Raphael, who saved my life. I think that was the least I could do. I thought, well, if I call the bike like this, I might not need another person to scratch me up from the road. That's wishful thinking.
Wonderful. So Raphael was the racer who found you and looked after you, and Raphael's now the new bike. And what's the plan? Is it too early to ask what the plan is? Is it simply take it month by month and see where you end up? Or, I mean, I see you're back on the turbo. Do you have any idea what you can realistically think about next year, or is it purely about rehab?
Well, at the moment, it's purely about rehab, obviously, and with the operations, I've got an appointment in January, end of January, where they're going to decide when they're going to do those operations, and I hope it's not going to destroy the entire year, and I hope it's all going to go as well as possible. And I've got obviously some things in the back of my head, but I think if you keep it in your head and let it grow, it gets stronger. If you talk about it a lot, then it's empty vessels make the most noises. Sorry. So therefore, I keep it to myself for now, because then no one is going to be disappointed, including myself, if it doesn't happen. But obviously, I had plans. The first thing that got me recovered was when I was lying in the MRI scanner. I thought, when I come back out, I want to hear that sound of a beeping sound of a time trial of some sort. I had the MRI scanner sound beeping in my ear, and I thought, this is awful. I'm really claustrophobic. And I thought, hold on a second. This is cycling. This is time trialing. It's good. You're going to get back. And this has always been keeping me going to have plans, and I instantly made plans, and I will not drop them. I will try.
That's awesome. It's interesting the things that connect you to the ride. For me, it's things like, because I've never really raced in that sense. For me, it's the sound of the free hub, and simple things like your cleats clipping in, clipping out. But there are sort of almost routines you get to, and those sort of sounds which make you feel, as you settle into long rides, like, okay, this is home. Like, it's just me and the road. You can always ride the road in front of you. And you go to a place which is completely different to anything else in life. It's different to family. It's different to work. It can be incredibly hard, but it's also brilliantly simple. It's just, as you say, it's you and the bike. Maybe I should name my bikes, but I was wondering what your collection of bikes were called.
If you would like to, I can name your bikes for you. I would have to meet them. If you send me a picture, I can name them.
I know the character of them. So this is a podcast, so you can't. It's very unfair for all the listeners. But I'm turning my camera so Anna can see the bikes from left to right on the wall. So
that's the whole family.
Yeah, we got the time trial bike, we got the gravel bike, the town bike, the road bike, and I've got my kids' bikes there too. So yeah, we've got a few bikes to name. It's I think it's amazing to share the story. The power of sharing stories is that you never know who it touches. You never know who can relate and is maybe in private going through their own challenges, has their own dreams. And for me, it's about giving people the quiet confidence to go out there, explore themselves, explore riding their bike. Really build that love for what they do. And what comes through chatting to you, Anna, is that sort of quiet determination. What bike riding has meant for you in terms of sort of purpose, and the fact that it brings sort of equilibrium to your work, and you obviously have an incredibly busy time. Can I go back to the way you describe yourself on Instagram? I get the whole global citizen, you've lived in a lot of places, mother, I get that. Slightly obsessed with goats and mountains. Is there any reason that you said that?
I just like goats. I was working in a yard where they had a couple of goats, and one particular little angry one captured me completely because she was so angry you couldn't touch her, and eventually we became friends. And I was just fascinated by them, and I love seeing them. They are also a lot in the mountains, and they like the mountains just like I do. So we've got this link, and I mean I've been told that I'm quite stubborn and quite tough like a goat. So I suppose maybe in a past life I don't know, but it feels a very familiar flock.
That's awesome. I can imagine what the Ana Orenz brand logo is going to look like when you launch your own kit. It's going to be some sort of a mountain goat, isn't it? I grew up on a goat farm. That's why I was amused by it. I grew up in the Highlands of Scotland on a goat farm. Every morning I went out, because I didn't go to school till I was 12. I went out every morning and hand milked goats until the age of 12. So not many people know goats, but that's why I was amused by your goat reference.
Yeah,
we can do a goat podcast another time.
Ultra goating.
ultra goating.
Mark, can I interrupt you about something? When you said you never know when it's going to inspire, I want to tell you something. I started cycling in 2016 when you were doing your 80-day ride. And I got into it after Ruby's and my pilgrimage. And I was reading Juliana Buehring's book.
Yeah,
and that was the beginning. And then I saw the Transatlantic Way Race, and then I got attention of yours, and I actually of yours challenge, and I just instantly was fascinated by this world. And at the time I was fairly captured. I was working a lot and I felt really captured. I didn't feel like I was fulfilling. I was doing what I wanted to do. And I saw this and I thought, this is amazing. I was reading Juliana's book, and last year I went up to her and I said, thank you so much for writing this, and thank you for inviting me over here, because you inspired me. And what you did, that when I saw your challenge, because like Juliana's challenge, it was crazy thing about you made it just super crazy and fast as well. I thought, this is awesome, and look, today we speak, and I think this is what it's about. If you manage to inspire just one or two people to just become a happier and freer version of themselves in your life, you've done all right. You've done actually all right. And it's worthwhile fighting for that. It's worthwhile fulfilling your dreams, I think. And thank you for that, by the way.
Thank you, Anna. That's lovely. Thank you. It's you ride your bike for very personal reasons. You do it because you want to figure out something about yourself. But if along the way you can share a story in a way which gives other people confidence, then, as you say, that's hugely powerful. And not just the good times, but the bad times. You know, you had some inspiring stories, you know, on your big races. But in a weird way, your crash and your recovery from the crash has probably impacted more people. And so, out of a really serious situation and something which has clearly not made your life any better, you've touched a lot of people. You know, you've managed to share your story, and you know you've made the time today to come and join me on this podcast. So so thank you for doing that.
That's all right. That's all right. But you know, it's not about this. That was 200 kilometers I rode, and I lay lazily in a bed for 6 weeks. You know, I wish I could take people, and I'm sure you will agree with that, to show them what I was seeing in the run up to that. You know, like not in the race, actually during the training when you're up in the mountains by yourself. And around here it's sometimes so beautiful. I have to stand for a second and just wipe a few tears off my cheeks because it's so beautiful. I just think, oh my God, who's put this here, you know? And you're out there on your bike and just yourself with your own strengths is a great feeling. And I wish that I could bring that out a bit more than just the accident and getting back up. If you know this, then you can get back up from everything, because you know there are so good things out there to get up for in the morning. You just have to somehow persevere to reach them.
Yeah, no, for sure. No, and I guess the amazing thing is, you know, you've got that perspective. You've done those big hard training rides. You've done some major races, so you really do have something that you know to fight back to. It's not a fiction. It's not a thought. Doesn't have that otherness about it. It's something that you kind of, it's your memories. You know what that's like. So getting back there, I can see is going to be a huge driving force, Anna. But I can also tell that your story is far from done. There's so much going to happen in the next couple of years, wherever that road takes you. So I'd love to get you back on the podcast in the future. You know, catch up, hear how you're getting on. You know, hear what the next chapter of your story looks like. And certainly when I'm over in Spain, I'll give you a shout.
Cool, and I hope you bring your kids and do the Camino.
That's inspiring. I'll be telling my daughters. Okay. I will definitely be telling my daughters.
Actually, it will change everything. You will get them hooked, and it's going to end really badly. You will have to buy expensive bikes and watch them in the future. And then one day she's going to be in the podcast with my daughter and not us.
Well, I can think of worse outcomes for sure. Thanks a lot, Anna. That was amazing, and we'll definitely keep in touch for the next chapter. For everyone listening, thank you so much for tuning in to the podcast. I hope you enjoyed the conversation as much as I did. And if you like this episode, do subscribe to the podcast and come back and hear more of This Is My Ride bike stories by Argon 18.